Whether you've just finished up a cutting phase or have a long history of dieting and need to fix your metabolism, you're going to need to start a reverse diet. The scariest part is knowing you'll probably gain some weight during the process, so if maintaining your weight while reverse dieting is important to you, today I'm going to cover everything you need to do to give yourself the best chance possible to avoid weight gain.
Hey, this is Colin DeWay. If you want to master your metabolism and end the yo-yo dieting cycle, start now by subscribing and click on that bell notification so you don't miss anything. Alright, it's time to start your reverse diet, but you don't want to gain any weight. Hey, I get it, and I'm going to help you here, but I also have to be completely frank with you. I could never promise that you won't gain any weight. In fact, most people will gain at least some. But it is possible. I have seen it done, and at least no matter what, I can give you all the tools necessary that you need to make sure that you at a very minimum minimize the amount of gain that you see. Now, one thing you have to keep in mind is it depends on why you're reverse dieting. Are you reverse dieting because you just finished a cut, or are you trying to fix your metabolism from years of yo-yo dieting and try to get into a better spot so you can lose fat later? But don't worry, no matter what situation it is, I will have strategies for you, and I will explain the differences throughout this video, so no matter which one is you, I will have your answers. Okay, if you want to avoid weight gain as much as possible, the first thing that you need to consider is the slower you take your increases in calories and reductions in cardio, the less likely you are to gain weight. Think about it this way, we're trying to get your body to adapt to higher calories. If you make bigger increases, it's gonna have a harder time keeping up. So if you increase your calories by say 20 to 30, it's gonna have a really easy time keeping up and it won't really even notice the difference. If you do something like 60 to 100 calories per week, that's gonna be much more noticeable and more likely that your body can't keep up with those changes. But as always, there's trade-off here. So the slower you increase your calories, the longer it's going to take to get your calories up. But this is partially why we have to take into account why you're reverse dieting. If you're post-diet and just trying to get your calories back up to a reasonable place, it might make more sense to take your time getting them up because you're just looking to maintain long-term anyway. But even then, there's still trade-off. Because if you're post-diet, there's a decent chance that you're going to be extra hungry, probably a little bit more moody and cranky, you're going to be a little bit more tired, it's going to be harder to recover from your training, and etc, etc. And if you take your increases slowly, it's going to take longer for those symptoms to go away, whereas if you do it faster, they will go away faster, but you're more likely to gain a little bit more weight. The other thing you need to consider when you're post-diet is what are your future goals now? Right? Are you just trying to kind of maintain your weight here, or do you want to go through an actual muscle building stage and have more physique-based goals? If you're just trying to create a good kind of life fitness balance and you just kind of want to roughly maintain, then a slower pace makes a lot of sense. If you want to actually focus on building muscle, well then it makes more sense to get your calories up faster and put your body in a position where you're gaining a little bit of weight to more optimally build. Now, if you're reverse dieting because you're trying to improve your metabolism from years of yo-yo dieting and you're trying to set yourself up in a position to more effectively lose fat later, then it might make more sense to do more of a moderate approach and do maybe like 40 to 60 calories per week and not necessarily worry too much about a little extra weight gain, because remember, this is a temporary situation now and you're going to be able to lose it later and then some. Now, this doesn't mean you should just say screw it and eat whatever you want and go crazy and gain a bunch of weight, but it is probably in your best interest to be okay with a little bit of weight gain to make sure that you get your calories up into a good spot, hold your higher calories for a long time, and set yourself up for future success. Alright, another factor you need to keep in mind if you want to maintain your weight in a reverse diet is to make sure you keep up your training intensity and stay on top of your training in general. A lot of people make the mistake of when they're not in a cut, they start backing off their training, their intensity, how often they go to the gym, and then when it's time to cut again, they start getting more aggressive. And like I told you in my last video, whether you're cutting or building, you really want to make sure that your training is relatively the same and make most of your changes through cardio and nutrition. You also don't want to back off your cardio and your just kind of regular activity throughout the day too dramatically all at once either, because say for instance you're doing a half-hour cardio 6 days a week and walking for an hour each day, and then all of a sudden you do nothing, your body's used to all that extra expenditure that it's not getting anymore, and you're probably going to start gaining weight pretty quickly. Much like you probably don't want to eat low calorie forever, you also probably don't want to do a ton of cardio forever, so you have to start tapering it back slowly. And much like the slower you increase your calories over time, the less likely you are to gain weight, the slower you taper your cardio back, the less likely you'll be to gain. Now, you don't necessarily want to get your cardio all the way down to nothing, and you do want to remain somewhat active, and it's going to help you be able to keep weight gain at bay. So if you're post-diet and just trying to get into a rough maintenance spot, then just kind of get it back to a spot that you can maintain on, that you're happy about, that you can sustain, and will keep you happy with your life balance. However, if you're trying to go through a reverse diet to increase your metabolism for a cut later, then it's going to be more of a benefit to get your cardio down as much as possible within reason. I still recommend usually for most people to keep between about 30 to 60 minutes of cardio per week. In this way, you'll still get some of the benefits from cardio, but also leave yourself enough room to make some adjustments when you cut later. All right, circling back to nutrition again, one of the safest increases you can make is doing it through protein. So if you're eating less than about 1 gram per pound of body weight, getting your protein up is an extremely safe increase in calories. Protein is very difficult to store as body fat thanks to its high thermic effect of food, so keeping protein high will help you minimize the chance of gaining weight during your reverse. In some cases, I'll even go as high as 1.2 grams per pound of body weight, because even though it doesn't appear that there's much of an anabolic effect of protein after about 0.8 grams per pound of body weight, there are other advantages of higher protein, like the thermic effect of food. The only real drawback of high protein in a reverse is as calories get higher, you're probably going to start getting a little bit fuller, and protein is very satiating, so if you have a hard time getting all your food in, increasing protein is going to make it more difficult to do so. Otherwise, whether you're making increases through carbs or fat doesn't make too much of a difference. However, I will say, especially in the earlier stages of a reverse post-diet, it seems like people tend to respond a little bit better to carbs as it creates a little bit more of an anabolic environment. That said though, once you get calories higher and you make sure you have a sufficient amount of carbs and fats no matter what, this is a spot where you can be more flexible and do more interchanges of carbs and fats, and it won't really make a difference. Plus, it helps create more flexibility in your diet. I do think it's important to point out though, and this is something I've actually changed my mind on in the last year or so, is that you don't necessarily have to get your calories as high as humanly possible. This doesn't mean there isn't any benefit in getting them nice and high, especially if you can do so, but the higher your calories get, the more likely you are to eventually start gaining some weight. If you're trying to improve your metabolism to be able to diet better later, getting that many more calories doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to be able to diet on that many more calories either. It certainly could, but it isn't usually as dramatic as most people think, and sometimes people just have to get every bit as aggressive as they did before. The difference is now your body will respond, whereas it didn't before. So in a sense, it's not necessarily about getting your calories extremely high, it's about not being in a deficit for a long period of time. But at a minimum, you need to at least make sure you get your calories high enough that you can make a reasonable drop in calories to be able to start your diet. And remember, your metabolism is adaptive, so whatever you do to start your diet is not how you're going to finish your diet, and you need room to make adjustments. But if you're post-diet and just looking to kind of roughly maintain and get your calories back up, then you just want to get your calories up to a spot that you're kind of happy with and you can create a good balance with and just keep them there. All right, now I want to talk about what I consider to be the most important thing if you want to maintain your weight and not gain during a reverse diet. I've talked before about how the more extreme your goal is, the more extreme your plan has to be in order to reach those goals, and make no mistake about it, maintaining weight and not gaining any weight during a reverse diet is a pretty extreme goal. But if you want to do everything you can to not gain any weight during a reverse diet, the biggest thing that's going to help you is by far remaining really diligent to the plan and staying super consistent and accurate. Every single example I could give you of all my clients who have done really well with the reverse and had great success with it are all people who did a great job of continuing to execute the plan. So this means continuing to crush your macros and getting all your workouts in and keeping the intensity high. Staying every bit as diligent to the plan as you would in a cut in your reverse is how you ensure that the reverse diet goes as well as possible. The worst thing you can do, and this is a really common mistake, is think I'm going to gain a little bit of weight anyways, so what's the point, and then just completely blowing it, because this is how things go south really fast. And this goes double when you're finishing a diet and going into reverse after your cut. In fact, this part of the diet is what I call kind of like the magic window, and some really fun and amazing things can happen if you do it right. This is where your hormones start to improve, your metabolism starts to pick up, you start to sleep better, recover better, you get more energy, and you just remain more active. And this is actually a spot where if you remain diligent, a lot of people will even lose weight during this process and get their calories up really fast and really high. Unfortunately, very few people actually do this, and they don't get to reap the rewards from it, because when you're post-diet, your hormones are all over the place and your body's just talking to you loud, and it really wants you to gain weight back. In fact, hunger is usually worse in a reverse diet, especially in the earlier stages, than it is in your cutting phase, and this is because ghrelin is really high and leptin is really low, and your hunger signals are just going wild. So not only are you going to be hungrier, but you're also not going to feel full when you do eat, and it can make it really easy to blow your macros. So you have to realize this and understand that what your body is doing is natural and it's not something that's wrong with you, but you also have to be willing to fight back, especially if you want to maintain your weight. But here's the thing, if you remain diligent here, you're able to get your calories up, because we do this typically based on how your body is responding, and if you don't gain any weight or even lose weight, we can increase calories a little bit faster. If you gain weight, then we can't increase calories until things stabilize. So if you want to get your calories up and maintain your weight, it's super important to stay diligent to the plan despite how you feel. I'm telling you, this part, the diet after the diet, is always the hardest part. But it's also a fantastic opportunity to see some tremendous progress if you do what most people won't do, stay on point. By the way, one of the best tips I can give you to keep you from overeating during this phase is once you've ate whatever your planned meal is, even though you're still going to be hungry, and you will still be hungry, do not eat anymore. Just wait 20 minutes and see how you feel. Chances are the hunger will have subsided by then. But if you just continue to eat because you're still hungry, you'll just keep eating and keep eating and keep eating, and you'll pretty much never feel full. Okay, don't go anywhere yet, because I do have some bonus tips here for you, some things that I do still think are really important that you need to keep in mind as you proceed with your reverse. First, understand that if you do gain a little weight in the earlier stages of a reverse, those first couple of pounds are probably just going to be your body replenishing its glycogen stores that have been depleted. Your muscles can hold about 500 grams of glycogen, and for every gram of glycogen that you store, you also store 3 grams of water with it. It's also possible for some people, especially if they went from not strength training, or at least not strength training consistently, to doing so consistently in a reverse diet, that they can actually gain some weight but see positive changes in body composition at the same time. So it's always important to remember that weight doesn't necessarily equal fat. But even with all that said, I still think personally that it's really important that you be okay with gaining a little body weight no matter what your goals are. If the reason you're reversing is because you're finished with a diet and you want to kind of roughly maintain, understand that there's a huge difference between gaining a little bit of weight back and gaining all the weight back. A lot of people get caught up in feeling like any amount of weight regain means that they've failed, and that's just not true. In fact, I've seen people who have literally lost 100 pounds and then feel like because they gained 10 pounds back, they've completely failed, and it just sets off the spiral where they end up going completely off plan and just gain all the weight back. But no, if you lost 100 pounds but gained 10 pounds back, you've lost 90 pounds. That's fantastic. We always tend to judge ourselves based on our lowest weight, but our lowest weight is very rarely maintainable. And if the reason you're reverse dieting is to fix your metabolism, you have to understand that any amount of small weight gain that you have in the short term will be well worth the trade-off of an improved metabolism and being able to get where you want to be in the future. So we always have to think big picture and not get so caught up in the now all the time. Life is just about so much more than just having as low of a body weight as possible, and we need to make sure we have balance. I mean, yes, a healthy lifestyle is important, but so is a life that you actually enjoy. And personally, I'd argue that obsessing about having a lower body weight is not healthy. So in the words of my friend Ryan from Total Transformation, make sure you're losing weight to live and not living to lose weight. Okay, there's one other important thing I want you to do here. There are a lot of common mistakes that many people make while reverse dieting. So make sure you check out this video right now to make sure you don't make these mistakes and set yourself up for reverse diet success. If you'd like help going through a reverse diet, just head to my website below, colinthewaytraining.com, go to online coaching and fill out the application. If you're new to the channel, consider subscribing, and I'll see you next time.